And now, the Lowe Post.
Welcome to the Lowe Post Podcast Quarantine Edition, where I'm very excited to be joined by Sandro Galea, the Dean of Boston University's School of Public Health, and someone that I really want to talk to about all of this because amid coronavirus mania and the justified sort of day-to-day obsession with how bad it's going to get and the physical effects and all of this, I'm very interested in the mental health effects both of coping with this as human beings and as parents and as children and individuals and the mental health effects that are going to be 2, 3, 4 years down the line. And Sandro, I know you're a lot of your scholarship has focused on sort of the intersection of epidemiology, psychiatric effects, behavioral impact of trauma and all of that. So I'm very happy to have you join and help our listeners out and educate us. And the first thing I would ask you is there anything in your scholarship that is comparable to this? Is this a black swan sort of event in terms of what the psychological and mental health effects are going to be? Can you compare it to anything?
Yeah, it is an unusual event, obviously. I do think we can compare it. I think we can compare it to any number of large-scale disasters that have happened. Now, it's different. Obviously, this is a pandemic. But there also have been epidemics in countries, for example, SARS, which swept through Asia as well as Canada at the time. But I think we can also compare to studies that have been done after, let's say, hurricanes, after places like Hurricane Katrina, studies that have been done after terrorist attacks, let's say like 9/11. Ultimately, all these events are highly disruptive stressors that affect large populations. And one would expect that in many ways, this is going to behave similarly. Now, there are particularities, obviously. There are differences, namely, in this case, principally the lockdowns and the stay-at-home orders. But the nature of a stressor that is widespread, that affects a lot of people and that affects segments of the economy, those are pretty consistent across events.
So there's everyone is having trouble sort of dealing with this. I saw one of my Facebook friends had a post this morning, saying that she feels like she has trouble getting out of bed every day. You just kind of want to hibernate through this because it's so scary. And there's the fear of catching it. There's the fear of who are your loved ones that are most vulnerable if they catch it. And those fears can be just all consuming. You can't get them out of your head. It becomes hard for some people to perform the sort of daily functions that I think they need to perform to stay sane. And then you have the accompanying fear of all of this is that the economy is collapsing and people are going to be scared in a lot of different industries, maybe every industry, of how am I going to survive? How am I going to keep my family afloat? Those are all sorts of different fears. I don't know if one is sort of more immediate and pressing to you than another. But what of that strikes you as sort of the most pressing thing to try to confront and overcome?
Yeah.
And how do you do it?
Well, I wish I could say there was one of them that was more important. I think everything you listed is important. I think everything you listed is reasonable. I think it's reasonable to be afraid. I think it's reasonable to be afraid of a circumstance that you've never lived through. I think it's reasonable to be afraid about being told to stay at home because there's a virus which you cannot see that you may contract or you may give to others. I think it's reasonable to say, I'm afraid of what's going to happen to my job and my kids' schooling given the economy. So I think these are very reasonable fears. In terms of how one deals with them, I actually think that the first way to deal with fears like this and anxieties like this is to acknowledge them, is to actually have this kind of conversation and to say, it is normal, it is reasonable to be anxious and to be fearful around moments like this. I think that element of normalizing and saying what you are feeling is normal, what you are feeling is right, what you are feeling is rational, can go a long way towards having each of us say, well, okay, I'm not feeling something that's abnormal that no one else is feeling. So that's step one. Then step two is, how do you make sure that you are as resilient as possible? And what we do know is that perhaps the biggest thing that affects our resilience, keeps us on the right side of mental health, is the supports we have, the social supports that can lift off some of the stressors. Now, this is what I worry about this time, because this is a time of physical distancing. It's a time where, by definition, we are limiting our social interactions. And I prefer the term physical distancing to social distancing exactly for this reason, because I think we should be physically distancing, but I do not want to see us socially distancing. I would like to see us remain socially connected, because if there's one thing I've learned from my research is that what matters most is social interaction. What matters most is that all of us retain social supports that can help us when things are tough. And now things are tough. So number one, I think you need to be aware of what's going on. Recognize that what you're feeling is normal. Number two, that you should have the supports to see you through it. And number three, at the end of the day, you need as much as possible to have stressors lifted off you. I think this is for parents with young children. There are two parents, to make sure that one of them gets a time away from the kids so the other one can look after the kids. If you're worried about your parents, to make sure that some of that worry is spelled off by other siblings. If insofar as you can, to make sure that you're able to cope with your work and to take the breather you need from your work. Lifting some of these stressors is essential to make sure that one can remain even-keeled and one can remain resilient in a time like this. And then number four, of course, I mean, there are some people who will have symptoms of mental illness, who will develop anxiety disorder, not just garden variety feeling anxious, anxiety disorder or depressive disorder or post-traumatic stress. And I want to make sure that anybody who has symptoms that they're worried about, that they can actually then access a healthcare provider.
What constitutes healthy social support right now? Because this is an unprecedented time. And I find, I don't know. First of all, I know for sure checking Twitter constantly is not a good method of healthy social support. Not. I don't think watching the president's press conferences is a healthy social interaction. I also am not sure if like calling friends and all of us talking about how scared we are and how depressed we are and how difficult this is, I don't know what that accomplishes. So like, what's a concrete thing that is like a healthy social thing that people can actually do right now?
Yeah, I actually think that it's any interaction with friends is probably positive. And I think, of course, we need to discipline ourselves so that we're not simply talking to our friends, our family, our loved ones, and getting ourselves into a worse spiral. But ultimately, we as humans, we are social creatures, and we do need social interaction. So I agree with you. I don't think Twitter is a sort of falsely named as a way of social interaction. I don't think it is. I think it's sort of it's a very one-sided type of interaction. I would encourage everybody to stay as socially connected with their friends, loved ones, colleagues as humanly possible in a time of physical distancing, probably using phone and digital means. And, we talk a lot about digital means, but phone works really well. And
I called two of my friends, my best friends from New York City. I called them on the phone. I don't think I've had a phone conversation with either of them, possibly in my entire life until yesterday when I was walking around. I said, let me see how person X is doing, or person Y is doing. And there was some fatalistic humor in the conversations, which I think is sort of inevitable for right now. But there was also, the tone of the conversations was different. And I would almost say like more tender and caring than 40-year-old kind of high achievers or whatever are accustomed to having those kind of conversations. And it was just a phone call. I didn't see their faces. I didn't FaceTime. It was just strangely comforting, I have to say.
And I think that's exactly right. I've often, when I've talked to younger colleagues and friends, perhaps the joke that holds truth is that for many millennials, phone calls were only there for pregnancies and weddings. That's the only time anybody ever called anybody. But if insofar as the phone calls coming back, that's probably a good thing. And look, I'm talking about millennials, but I've also talked to many people who say, look, my parents are elderly and they're isolated, and phone calls are the way to communicate. I do think this is a time for kindness. It's a time for people caring for each other. It's a time for people going the extra step to look after everybody in their social network, because that ultimately is what's going to get us through this, and what is going to get us through this with our mental health intact.
You said something, I don't know if it was you, but I watched the School of Public Health's mental health symposium online the other day, and I think it was another presenter said something that spoke to, I think, how a lot of people in my social circle are. And I think probably a lot of NBA players who are in their 20s or 30s and in the physical primes of their life and strong and healthy people, I think may apply to them too. And the line was something like, asking for help is not a skill that they are used to using. And I think a lot of young men my age, particularly men, are, I think to a fault, let me just internalize it and soldier through, and are not good at it. And I can't speak for all NBA players, but I think a lot of young men are probably not good at saying, I'm scared, I'm hurting, I need help. And a lot of NBA players, by the way, are living alone in high-rise buildings where it's hard for them even to go to the gym in their building is closed. So does that resonate with you? And like, how
Absolutely.
how do you get over that hurdle of like, I'm going to be vulnerable and do it?
Yeah, I think it's important that young men in particular realize that mental illness does not discriminate. It doesn't discriminate by age and gender or by race, and that I've spent my entire adult career studying mental health and mental illness, and young men of all colors or races, all ethnicities, get mental illness as much as anybody else. So I do think it's really important to be upfront about this and to say this is a difficult time, and it's a difficult time for everybody. And I would encourage any young men who are listening to you to make sure they reach out to their friends and actually to destigmatize this notion that if you have any concern about anxiety, about depression, you're feeling the stress of the moment, that somehow makes you lesser than anybody else. We will get through this if we get through this together.
So you constantly hear, in terms of staying mentally healthy, you hear all these tips, right? And the tips are pretty obvious. Like, go outside for a walk. Outdoor light is good. Get some exercise. If it's a home workout, that's fine. Try and instill some sort of routine in your life. I, for one, have not shaved in 2 weeks. It's getting a little ugly in here. Try and instill a little bit of work routine in your life. Those are all like, everyone can say those things. They're easy to conceptualize. I think when fear and anxiety reach a certain level, it's hard for people to actually do them. They seem like enormous steps for people who are suffering. Just the simplest thing seems like such an enormous challenge, and it's easier to just stay in bed and say, I can't. So A, are there any other sort of tips of that nature of sort of routinizing your life for your mental health? And B, this is a dumb question, but for people who are struggling just to do those things, how do you take the first step?
So number one, let me reinforce what you just said, Zach. I think routine is critical. And I'm not just saying that from a perspective of, I think it is. It's actually, we have science on this. It shows very clearly routine is critical. So no, staying in bed all day is absolutely the worst thing you can do. It's you need to get out of bed and go on with your day and establish a routine. Now, I understand that the routine is not going to be the same as the routine before we were under sort of stay-at-home orders or various other forms of restrictions, but one can have a routine. You get up at a certain time, you have breakfast at a certain time, you communicate with a certain number of people, and you craft a day that way, and you craft a week that way. I think that is critical. Going outside, if one can, is very important, and at least once a day. Try to go out once a day for exercise. I'm working from home. My routine is I get up in the morning, and first thing I do is go for a run, and that is really important for me. And obviously different combinations work for other people. But if you are having a difficult time coping, if you feel like your thoughts of anxiety, your thoughts of sadness, your thoughts of being depressed, you're not eating, you have no energy, and that is becoming overwhelming, then you need to talk to someone. You need to talk to a professional who can help. And there are any number of helplines that you can call if you do not have a regular doctor or regular healthcare provider. But if you do have a doctor or regular care provider, that would be the person to reach out to.
Are there any other sort of tips of the nature of exercise and routine? Are there any other little things that you've come across that are helpful for people that are just sort of like easy little things you can do?
Eat healthy. Eat healthy. I think one of the challenges with being at home is it's very tempting to eat junk food and to sort of be sitting on the couch watching Netflix all day. Eat healthy. Eat regular meals. It is your life is going on, and If before this started you were having breakfast, lunch, and dinner, you should keep having breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and that's it. And you should not be having other junk food. And this is not simply out of people say, well, it's worried because junk food is going to make us fat. I'm not talking about that at all. I'm actually talking about there is good evidence that eating healthy, eating well is positive for our mental health.
Someone on that symposium that I mentioned before mentioned reframing as a tactic, and reframing is one of these buzzwords that you hear. And I found myself thinking, what in the heck does reframing mean in a situation like this? Like how this is none of us have lived through, or most of us have not lived through anything like this and will not live through anything like this. Like I understand what reframing is in my normal life. Like I understand how to reframe a stressful work situation as an opportunity or whatever it is. How does that apply here, if at all?
I think this conversation is a conversation about reframing. If you think about it, it is. We are saying in this conversation, feeling anxious at this time is normal. Feeling a bit sad at this time is normal. That is reframing, right? Reframing says, let me understand what's going on in the world. Let me understand what's going on to you. And let us make sure that you behave in a way that can help you stay healthy during this time.
One thing that I've found, I don't know if this is reframing or whatever, but when I was in the depths of my fear and anxiety, I thought of, well, I have to think of this also as an opportunity for me to exhibit strength for my daughter, who's 5 and doesn't really understands to some degree that obviously there's been a disruption. We tell her about the virus. We tell her that it's easily catchable, but this is a very cheeky, maybe dumb thing, but I thought this is an opportunity for me to show leadership as a father and a husband, as a parent. And I can't let her see, I can't let her see me down or sad, or not down or sad, but I can't let her see me give in, kind of thing. Does that count? Is that reframing?
Absolutely. It counts. Look, I have 2 teenagers, and one of the things that I'm worried about all the time is how to make sure that they stay healthy. You know, teenagers are at the peak of their social lives. You mentioned young men being at the peak of their physical health in their 20s, and I would argue that in our teens we're at the peak of our social lives. So this is very hard for teenagers, and I keep reminding myself that my staying healthy is important for them, because in some respects I do not have the luxury of allowing myself to wallow, because I need to be there for them. So absolutely, I think that's reframing. And again, I think that's important, but I also do not want to minimize that some people are going to have a hard time coping, and it's okay to have a hard time coping. I would like us to be able to embrace the fact that some of us will need help, and if you need help, to make sure you get that help.
What is an appropriate way to consume media right now?
In limited, controlled doses. We know from other, and I think that's shown up by the evidence. We know from other other studies that after large-scale disasters, those who watch more and more television. I'll start with television because actually most of the studies happen to be around television because they were done before the advent of social media. Are the ones who actually have worse mental health. So I would be very cautious about over-consuming media. I would get your news, get your facts, and move on. There is nothing gained by the constant 24/7 exposure to media, which really is simply reinforcing and drumming in stressors.
What, in 2, 3, 4, 5 years, what do you think we're going to see as long-term? You know, we're all so focused right now on when are things going to be normal again? How do I get through this week? When you look at, I take an age group. I don't know whether it's 25-year-old men or 5-year-old kids or teenagers. What are you going to be looking for in 4 or 5 years? Are we going to see lasting mental health effects and or damage from this? And what kind of questions will you ask? What kind of ways will you see if that exists?
I do think so. I mean, mental health consequences are long lasting. They last much longer than many other consequences. So I do worry that we're going to have a wave of mental health consequences that include depression, anxiety, post-traumatic stress disorder, change of substance use. All of these things are real concerns. I also worry about the mental health consequences of the economic downturn. A lot of people are going to be affected by this. A lot of people are going to be affected by the economic downturn. And those people are going to then have long-term physical and mental health consequences.
In terms of just continuing economics, not economics, in terms of just continuing anxiety.
Yeah, exactly. Well, being unemployed or being underemployed or being worried about your income is a sure way to have an ongoing stressor. So I really worry about these long-term economic consequences and how they are going to affect our collective health and our collective mental health.
And you've studied this in other traumatic situations, right? You've followed groups for X amount of years, 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, and you've seen essentially permanent change.
Absolutely. Yeah, we have seen that, and it has been it's unquestionable that it's there, and that people who face long-term stressors are the ones who are likeliest then to continue to have the long-term psychological consequences of the acute trauma. So it's not just a matter of, we've been talking in this conversation about the psychological consequences of coronavirus. Now, I worry about those psychological consequences being deepened by people then experiencing long-term economic losses, which continue to be a stressor.
What about anything specific for people living alone? And I say that for both NBA purposes, because a lot of players do live alone, single, no family, no kids, anything like that. And there are a lot of people of all ages who are living alone. And I think that is as much as everyone's sort of making jokes about, oh, my kids are in my hair all the time, that I can't get any work done. I think that obviously you can FaceTime, you can call, but when you're living alone right now, there's just going to be a certain amount of time where it's literally just you and the TV, you and books. And that strikes me as I'm trying to put myself in that situation, and that strikes me as a little bit scary on lots of different levels.
Yeah, I feel for everybody living alone. I think social connection's really important right now. And insofar as we've been talking about routines, we've been talking about making an effort to reach out to other people through digital means, through telephone, through whatever Zoom, through playing games together. That's even more important for anybody who's living alone. So I would encourage any of your listeners who are living alone. It becomes even more important that you get out of bed, you change, you have a routine, you set for yourself a schedule, and you stick to the schedule. I would go to, if you have NBA players or young people who are, as you say, the prime of their physical life, you need to understand that you're not going to be able to perform at the peak of your physical potential if your mental health is not up to par. So you owe it to yourself to look after your mental health in this moment.
Last thing, and I don't mean to, this isn't as leading as it seems, but like, what does effective leadership look like right now, both politically and for CEOs of a company? Like what would actually be helpful for regular civilians to hear from people in positions of power right now?
I think what's helpful is to hear honesty. I think to hear honesty and to be told, this is what we know, this is what we don't know, this is what you recommend that you do, or this is what we ask you would do. Here is why we're making the decision. It may not be a perfect decision, and we'll revisit it if we have other data. I think people need to hear honest, consistent, reliable communication.
All right. Well, I know you have other things to do. I appreciate you taking the time to come on here. I think this is it's really important, and I hope everyone is hanging in as best they can. Are there any other places that you want to send people, either at your School of Public Health's website, or any tips, any last things you want to say?
Yeah, if anybody's interested, we have a number of resources on our School of Public Health website. You can look at the COVID-19 page. But I would encourage everybody listening to take the message to heart and stay well and be well.
Dr. Galea, thank you very much. I know you're busy and you're very much in demand, and you've been helping people across all forums try to figure out how the heck to deal with this. So I thank you for taking the time. I wish you and your family well, and I hope we can talk another time under more normal circumstances.
Thank you for doing this, Zach. Thank you for what you're doing.
Okay, let's bring on Keon Dooling, the player wellness counselor for the National Basketball Players Association and a longtime NBA veteran who has been helping for a long time now, but I guess in particular now during this crisis, players deal with all of this. Keon, how are you?
I'm doing fantastic, my friend. How are you?
Fantastic. I like to hear that. That's a very nice, it's not just good. It's not just, hanging in. You're doing fantastic.
Hey, listen, man, we are restless, but resilient at the same time. So we're having fun during this quarantine.
I like it. So take me through, since the NBA shut down, however many, I think 19 days ago, I'm losing track of time.
Man.
Take me through sort of your day to day. Like, how many players are you talking to a day? What kind of things are they asking? Or are you not talking to players? Are you more talking to the league office about what's going to happen, or to Michelle Roberts? Like, what's your day to day been like?
Yeah, I mean, it's been, how do I say it? It's been like an opportunity in chaos. I think, because of the rigors of the NBA schedule, things go really, really fast. But now we're forced to kind of like slow down. So I'm able to connect with guys in the most unique of ways, in particular around social media. I think, our players have such a presence and are so influential. I think one of the coolest and quickest ways you can connect with them is on social media. And so, yeah, I've been, doing podcasts with players. We've done Danny Green's podcast. Been talking to guys individually, kind of encouraging some guys who reach out to me and some guys who I have a rapport with. But more so than anything, just, providing that infrastructure support, making sure that, we can still connect with the guys, but just not physically.
What are players asking about right now, either from a mental health perspective or from just a sort of logistical perspective? What kinds of things are they curious about?
Yeah, I think the most important thing that guys are concerned about is like the uncertainty, right? The uncertainty where they can't control their schedules, their routines, their day-to-day life that they're so used to and accustomed to. That uncertainty is the biggest thing that I've noticed that guys, have. And unfortunately, I can't, I don't have that timeline that's above my pay grade. But what I can help them with is how to process it, how to embrace what you're feeling, and, how to set your own routine so that, you can, stay active and maximize the time in the day. And so you try and give them little tools, but the uncertainty, I think, is at the heart of everybody's concern.
What kind of little tools are you giving them? What kind of advice are you giving, or what seems to be being received well by them?
Well, I mean, I don't know what's being received the best. All I know is that, I want them to know that they're supported. There's infrastructure support. There's online, sessions we can have. I just more so than anything, I just want to educate them on what is available to them. Give them some of my nuggets that I might have learned along the way, and just try and help support them, as they try and wrap their minds around this experience. But I can't go into detail about one or two, guys in particular.
You can?
I cannot.
Oh, you guys can say that would surprise me.
Yeah, I cannot.
What do they think, or what kind of feedback have you gotten so far about this idea that the way to salvage the season is to have everyone in like a bubble quarantine environment in Las Vegas or something, from, separated maybe from their families for a couple months, maybe longer? I mean, LeBron has already spoken about it. Have you had players asking you, is this real? Is this going to happen? And what kind of reaction do you get when you start talking about it?
Yeah, I have not had guys ask me that specific question. However, I have heard about that concept. And I think, in times of, uncertainty, it's the creative people who can, kind of navigate this space. And so I'm not sure if that's going to work. I'm not sure if it will. I have no idea, Z. But obviously, in the silence and not having sports, I really do see the impact that we do have on society. How we are such a pastime and such a connection point and such a camaraderie point for so many. That I do understand why, our role in society when you take sports away.
Yeah, I think it's going to be really interesting, Keon, because I do think the reporting around that has been right, and something like that is emerging as, barring some unexpected good trajectory of this in the next month, maybe the only way to salvage the playoffs plus whatever in the regular season. And I know the league is concerned about, would the players ever sign off on this, because it is a very strange concept of, you're separated from your family, you're kind of separated from the rest of the world, and there are no fans there, and no one has really ever played in front of no fans before. And I know the league is concerned about, like, could we actually sell that to players? I don't know the answer to that question. It's hard to wrap your mind around,
Yeah, I mean, it is definitely, hard to wrap your mind around. But for such a time, I think, you have to be creative. You have to, be liquid. You have to be able to move and, kind of feel the pieces and try and make sure that, you do all you can to, to protect your brand, but also to keep the players safe. It's a balancing act. And, I'm hoping and praying that they come up with something that just makes sure that everybody is safe.
What, some players have families. Some guys are married. Some guys aren't. A lot of guys live alone, which strikes me as a unique challenge. What do you, particularly younger guys, what do you tell guys who are literally by themselves?
Wow. I mean, I've never had to live alone. Me and my wife, we got married at a very early age, so I can't, I can't really relate or give them the tools from my life experience. However, I have had to spend time with myself. And in those times, I like to exercise. I like to read. I like to pray. I like to meditate. I like to, stay connected and FaceTime with people who I care about. I like to do these, if I'm alone, I try and enjoy my experience by myself. However, I've never had to be alone in quarantine, right? So that is a different experience. And so I'm encouraged. I'm hoping everybody just kind of stays connected while staying socially distanced.
Did you have players, or do you still have players, who were concerned or are concerned about being separated from their families because they don't live in their family doesn't live in the market that they play in, and they still haven't left or been able to leave or anything like that? Has that been an issue?
Like I said, I'm sure that would be concerning to any father or any parent or any husband or any fiance or boyfriend. Just that uncertainty of not knowing when you can and can't go. But I just believe that, at this day and age, we're more connected than ever. And so even when we're isolated and, in a room, we can still, explore the world through all this great technology. And so if ever a time, in history that, you can make the most out of being isolated, I think this is the time.
It's true. And I think you told me starting tomorrow, you're going to start having Zoom sessions with players or groups of players. I can't remember the specifics, but tell me about that.
Yeah, I'm excited about the wellness roundtable that myself and Dr. Parham have kind of come up with along with our department. And, we just really want to, create a platform where guys can come in and, kind of connect. I know as a retired player, one of the things you miss more so than anything is the locker room and that feeling and that experience and that safe haven. And so, though that can never be replicated, we hope that, this Zoom session will give guys an opportunity to come in and share and, just feel connected to, the brotherhood.
So how is that going to work? Is it going to be like a set, like 10 guys can come in and you're like, you have a list of 10 guys for X amount of minutes? Like, how is that going to work?
Yeah, it's pretty open. I'll invite, certain people, different people will invite certain people on. However, it's pretty much open, to our guys. And so whoever kind of wants to chime in, they can chime in. If they want to say something, they can. If they don't, that's fine. We just want to create this like safe haven, where there's a wellness roundtable and we're just, sharpening each other up.
Because NBA players, are obviously very privileged. They make a lot of money. They have some benefits that regular people don't have. They have income certainty to some degree, although we'll see if that April 15th paycheck comes. But they have a lot of money saved up. I've talked to players who have nannies or in-home theaters for their kids. But, and your own experience can attest to this. I mean, a lot of players have past traumatic experiences that are still difficult for them to deal with. Every player or most players have parents or grandparents who they're probably worried about, just like we're all worried about our parents and grandparents getting through this and being safe and all of that. I mean, it's not as if financial security is helpful and definitely eliminates some sorts of stressors that a lot of people are going to be exposed to, but it doesn't eliminate everything, right?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, you put a lot of context with that, and I agree, man. There's a lot of concerns, but just getting in times like this is where things can come up, from your past, from your experience. And I know personally as an athlete, we're so busy achieving and climbing at every intersection that most of us haven't processed our journeys at this point in our lives. And so I just encourage anybody who's listening, not just, ball players, but anybody, if these things are coming up, don't ignore them. Attack them with, all your heart, all your wisdom, all your knowledge, all the resources that are available to you. Because in these kind of moments, things do come up. I know for me, man, I miss my dad, right? Mm-hmm. My dad died about 11 years ago. And, now that it's quiet and, I don't have a whole bunch of like ripping and running, hey, man, that feeling of missing him is coming up. So I have to make sure, I give attention to it. I put my routine together so that it doesn't, bring my mood down.
I know that you primarily deal with active players, but you are a retired player, and retired players don't have that income coming in anymore, and we've documented that a lot. Are you in touch with retired players now too? Do you guys as this crisis is gripping the nation?
Oh yeah, man. I'm in that loop with our brothers, and look, this is a time where we're all concerned for one another. A lot of us are in the gig business in our post careers, and so there's not a lot of gig opportunities right now. But that's what it's all about. You got to be there for your friends during ups, downs, and we're trying to rally around each other just to keep each other encouraged.
So going forward, as this goes on, you're really a sounding board. It sounds like you want to communicate, you want to be in touch, whatever players need, you want to know that there are resources. I mean, is that an accurate kind of summary of what your role is right now?
Somewhat around their mental and emotional health.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's really important. I've been around this game a long time to know how things work. And so if somebody calls me and it's not for my department, I want to be able to place them to the resources within the Players Association, because we have a plethora of resources from, anything physical, health wise, anything, around the brand. We have this infrastructure that can support that. So I like to, make sure I hand them off to the right places.
Now, last thing, I have a rule on this podcast. Anyone who comes on that played any time with Kevin Garnett
KG
has to tell Kevin Garnett stories, because he's one of the all-time NBA characters, one of the all-time best players. I believe you only had one season with him.
Yeah,
Boston,
man.
Boston in 2012, which is when you guys took the Heat to 7 in the conference finals. But give me some KG stuff.
Yeah, man. KG was he was a pleasure to be around every day. Every day I was excited to go to work to see him in his element. A lot of people don't know this, but why KG is so great is because he is so dedicated to the game. He's a master of his craft. He did the same thing, the same way, the same time every day. So the way he put on his shoes, the way he walked in, the way he did his on-court routine, the way he did his weight room routine, how he got stretched, when he watched Family Guy before the game, how everything was like this whole routine, and he would teach us, like, hey, look, this is why you put chia seeds, before you go in the game, because they hold more hydration, and just all these little master tricks that he had. And he was so down to earth that he would share this with us, and he would do this every day. And it was just, I was in awe of his routine and his ability to focus that much for those long stretches of time. He is spectacular. He is appreciated from me as a teammate, and he's probably my all-time favorite teammate.
Wow. So tell me the truth. When Paul Pierce makes that shot in Miami and you go up 3-2, you've beaten the Heat 3 times in a row. They're coming off the finals loss against Dallas the year before. You're going home to Boston for game 6. Did you guys think you had him?
Oh, come on. We was rubbing our hands together like, we're going to close this thing out. It's high time, right? And then we ran into one of the greatest performances in the history of the game. To this day, I heard LeBron on his live the other night saying that was a real defining moment in his career. And I tell you, man, he was on another level. You could look in his eyes and you could just see the intensity in the eye of the tiger, during that performance.
And you knew it right away, right? Like, he didn't take more than a minute to announce in that game, I'm here and something special's about to happen.
Yeah, you knew it was happening, but while you're in the battle, you're like, okay, what can we do to stop it? Like, let's try and make somebody else beat us. But he was just, it was one of those nights where he just was spectacular against some spectacular players and a great, a defensive team. We had a good continuity on our defensive schemes. Doc Rivers is a mastermind. Tyronn Lue was like a defensive coordinator during that period too. So, he just, everything we threw at him, he just chopped us up.
Do you come out of that going back to Miami for game 7? Do you still have a belief that we can still get this done? Or did he kind of rip at least a little bit of it out of you?
No, man. I think, the one thing about the Celtics and Doc Rivers as a leader, he always says, guys, if we want to go quick, you go alone. If we want to go far, we must all go together. And so he would have these speeches and these preparations that would just reshape, the loss and get you to focus on the closeout. He was a master at, getting you to major in the, just focus on the goal at hand. But in a long story short, I think that game 7, we had an opportunity to win. It was close down the stretch. And, they made plays and they got to the foul line. I'll emphasize quite a bit. And, they were able to, close us out. But man, we thought we were right there. We thought we had a chance to win all the way to the end.
That was a strange playoff run. That was the run that, Uncut Gems, is about, is the series. Did you see Uncut Gems yet? Speaking of KG?
You know what? I have not seen Uncut Gems yet, my friend.
You gotta see it. KG's fantastic in it.
I heard. I gotta check it out.
It takes place during the Philly series in the second round that went the distance, I believe. That was an ugly, hard fought series. Is there anything else that you felt like we haven't covered about the mental health elements of this that you really wanted to get across and what the players union is doing?
Yeah, well, a couple points that I would love to kind of make is one that, we're here, myself and Dr. Parham, we're here as a resource. We're here to support you and your family through this adverse time. So that's one thing that we want to make sure that the players know. 2, we have a network of doctors across every NBA city as well as San Diego and Vegas to be able to support them online right now due to the quarantine. So those resources are available to our players as well. The website, all the players have access to the website. They can go in the portal and check out the mental wellness program. And, we got a plethora of resources on there that will really help educate them on what they might be experiencing. And yeah, that's my story and I'm sticking to it, Zach.
Yeah. And teams have done a good job too of making either they have psychologists in house or they've made psychologists like if these players are feeling something, they can call for help. And part of it, this is a dumb thing, but like these are some of the toughest dudes in the world, physically, athletically, mentally. Part of this is the last thing. Part of this is like, you got to part of it is just simply getting anyone really to say, I need help, to just say those words, right?
Yeah, man. And that's where the brotherhood comes in. I know for me, when I went through my battle with PTSD at the end of my career, hey man, I don't want anybody to have to get to that broken point before they start to rebuild themselves and do their work. I think we can do a lot of preventative work by being vulnerable and sharing our stories, by sharing the message with passion, by having the resources and knowing how to get the guys to the resources. I think, it's a generational thing that we're dealing with. And I'm so thankful that the NBA is the first sports league to have this mental wellness program.
And Keon's story, he's written a lot about it. He wrote a very long essay for the Players Tribune a couple of years ago. It's very moving and touching. You can read that if you want more. Okay, Keon Dooling, the player wellness counselor for the NBPA. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, my friend.
Keep up the good work.
Man, likewise, Z. I'm proud of you. Keep going, champ.